Pecha Kucha 134, Howard Chaykin week. I spent all week actually playing Red Dead Redemption 2. I'll talk a little bit about that, but by coincidence, I've read two graphic novels, both written by Howard Chaykin, and one of them was actually drawn by him as well, and that would be The Shadow, which is the first book we're going to talk about. But I actually did do a little bit of drawing within the last 7 days. Daily sketch of Kim from King of Fighters. A difficult angle. I think I just couldn't get the positioning of his legs quite right. I actually drew the thing 3 times within the time limit and still couldn't nail it. I'm totally out of practice, right? But anyway, the Shadow. He's like a 1930s noir bad guy who just kind of shoots dudes and claims he does it in the name of justice. And he's been like updated for the 80s under Howard Chaykin, as I understand it. And the book starts with maybe the first 10 pages, like a string of characters being introduced in the middle of conversations, doing all these things. You don't know who anyone is. You don't know what they're doing. It's a very confusing start, but if you bear with it, it will all come together. One of the most difficult things for me to deal with in this book is I'm not a fan of the colouring. I'm not entirely convinced Howard Chaykin is a fan of the colouring either. Alex Wald is the colorist. This is really how I could date it to the 80s, because this is between the 70s and it's not quite the 90s, right? So, but the thing about the Shadow, the main character, is he's an old dude who's just hasn't aged, but he's kept his prejudices with him. So he's confronted by like a modern woman who calls him like a chauvinist pig, and that's what he is, and unashamedly. It's quite an interesting thing how unlikable the main character is. He's also a cold-blooded murderer, and he claims he does it in the name of justice. But yet again, when the same woman confronts him, like, what about due process? What about the police? He's just like, justice needs to be done. I don't give a dude. Uh, he's a man with principles. Steve Ditko would like him, but he's a very noir character. And the noir tropes are thick and fast in this. There's a femme fatale who's determined, who's only interested in sex and murder, and she ends up dead at the end of this because, you know what, for a comic book, an awful lot of the characters introduced end up dead. It's 4 comics as a run as well. So how this guy from the 1930s has managed to survive to the 80s without aging is he ended up crashing in the Himalayas and found a super science city called Shambhala or something, where he got techno-scienced and he's got mind powers and stuff. Yeah, whatever. It's and at the back of the book, Howard Chaykin's actually having a conversation with his editor, and he seems to be as hard-nosed and quick to throw out the barbed insults as anyone else in the book. It's a very interesting read, I think, all in, because I'm a fan of film noir. I'm not sure how comic book fans would feel about reading something like that, but here, Howard Chaykin has written something far less challenging for the reader. It's a reimagining of Iron Man's origin, although really it's more of an updating. I think it even says that on the back. Marvel Season 1, I can't tell you when this was. I think it was 2010, 2012, something like that. And it is basically the same story it always was, or has been for the last 40 years, I think. Tony Stark is an arms dealer. He gets kidnapped. He gets blown up by shrapnel from one of his own mines. He has to make his first Iron Man suit to escape terrorists, basically. And this is him escaping the terrorists in his hodgepodge Iron Man suit, which is very cool. The updating of the original silver costume, which he doesn't wear outside of this, it's very cool. So is the art. I typically see a lot of painterly stuff with Thor. It feels a bit of a stretch for Iron Man, but high quality art is high quality art. So the bad guy for this story arc is an old friend of Tony Stark's from his college days, who's become some kind of radicalized terrorist who, in Tony Stark's escape in that suit, he gets horribly maimed and effectively looks like the Red Skull and has his own Iron Man suit. While all of this is going on, Tony Stark is presumed dead, and his staff are defrauding his company. It's interesting because it goes nowhere, because all the sinister dudes end up dead by coincidence. because we can't have clever things going on in a Marvel comic, can we? And at the back, there's artist breakdowns, which it's always good to see because he could have chosen to make the art a bit more, well, not easy to read, but it could have had stronger black lines, but he chose not to. I love this kind of stuff, and it's great it's at the back. But what I actually spent my week doing was playing Red Dead Redemption 2. I don't recommend games, but if I did, I'd recommend this. But if you haven't played it, you're not going to. it's pretty good, I'd say. You'd hope so, being maybe the third most expensive game ever made, or whatever. You play. It's a prequel to Red Dead Redemption 1. You play as a cowboy in Dutch Van der Linde's gang. It's a sandbox, and you can choose how you want to play it. There's a fair amount of flexibility, but it's really, you're a cowboy, so you do what cowboys do. Arthur Morgan is the main protagonist, and his morality can be altered by your decisions. And it seemed to me that the plot mimicked the way I played him in the tone that he took later into the story. I don't know if that's a coincidence because I took the most likely choice or what. But it was good times. Right, and let's not forget today. Today is the day where Jesus rose after 3 days in the tomb when the Easter Bunny came and gave him that chocolate elixir. So I will leave you to enjoy the rest of your Easter Sunday, and that brings us to the end of Pecha Kucha 134. I will see you next time.